You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry ChillyBoy Chilson, and this is my ranking of the 10 Best Picture nominees for the Academy Awards 2022. Now, before we get into this ranking, make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so that you can chill with me on each and every one of my latest videos. Academy Awards are finally upon us after what feels like the absolute longest award season ever. And I, for one, am ready to move on. Before we get to the big ceremony and move along to the next year and the next batch, as always, I wanted to look back at the roster of Best Picture nominated films and share my thoughts and complete ranking of my own personal views for the films. And this year is the first year we had a mandatory 10 films fill up these nominee slots. And I have lots of probably unpopular opinions to get to. So, without further ado, let's cut the chit chat and get into my personal ranking of the 10 Best Picture nominees. Now, kicking us off in the 10th position, I have Licorice Pizza. If you are a frequent watcher of the Oscar related material here on my channel, well, you already know how I feel about Licorice Pizza. It's not very positive. This film even made it in as an honorable mention for my worst films of the year list. I do not like it, really, in any regard. For starters, yes, those controversial elements really detract from the film. The age gap with a 15-year-old minor, weird, needless racism jokes thrown in at the expense of Asian women. Could have left it out. Honestly, the script at large is just all over the place. It's not really a coherent type of coming of age story. We go from one little skit to the next. It feels like maybe some vignettes, a lot of ideas that Paul Thomas Anderson had were just thrown into a blender and they came up with Licorice Pizza. Almost nothing about this film really works for me, so it's easily my least favorite nominee. Again, at number 9, I have West Side Story. I know, another controversial opinion, but one you shouldn't be too shocked with if you've watched my content, including my review for this very film. I'm glad we cast brown folks this time around. I was happy to see the Latinx representation on the screen instead of, just kind of painting people's faces brown. I'm glad we got actual singers and actual dancers this time around. And Steven Spielberg directed his butt off. This movie does look gorgeous with big, beautiful dance musical numbers. From all visual aspects, it's a beautiful film. However, none of that really matters to me when the content inside that beautiful outer layer isn't that good. Yeah, we cast brown actors, but we cast very American brown actors and had them put on these quite thick, somewhat offensive sounding Puerto Rican accents. The content itself is still very nationalistic and has problems in how the Puerto Ricans are depicted here. And then the love at first sight, Romeo and Juliet story, who cares anymore? We've seen it so many times. Maria as a character is just so ridiculous. What she does in this film is so dumb that it's hard to even connect. And then when you have an alleged sexual predator as your leading male romantic interest, and he has literally zero chemistry with the leading lady, it all just kind of fell flat for me. West Side Story didn't work. I didn't need another version of this story in the first place. And now that we have it, yeah, those concerns were confirmed. At number 8, I have Don't Look Up. Now, I didn't hate this film and I didn't love this film. I don't believe it should have been nominated for Best Picture because it's just so obvious, so in your face. I mean, Adam McKay has really thrown out the tiny touch of subtlety and nuance he once had in his satires. Now it's a sledgehammer straight to the head over and over and over again. And then he comes out and says, if you didn't like it, you didn't get it. Who in their right mind didn't get this? He beats you in the face with it. Come on now. The performances are fun enough. The content does have some good satirical comedy to it. Unfortunately, it's just that script is so damn ham fisted. It almost borders on parody of itself. It's so obvious. Also, there's just too many characters, too much buffoonery going on, too much editing going on. For me, McKay has certainly crossed over into that aspect where it feels like he's just parodying his own style at this point. And Don't Look Up was kind of the epitome of that. Coming in at number 7, I have The Power of the Dog. Yes, the film critique's favorite film of the bunch came in lukewarm on my end. Now, a film about deconstructing toxic masculinity and this LGBTQ representation in a very hyper masculine old West should have been right up my alley. Unfortunately, the way that it's handled on screen left me feeling nothing. Honestly, I just didn't feel with the film. It's cold, it's almost lifeless as we go throughout this story. There was just such a disconnect as I watched the film that unfortunately I did feel the runtime. I was one of those people that was like, ooh, okay, can we move this along somewhere? Because I didn't connect with the material. The characters are all highly unlikable, which is the point of it. But even as we get these revelations, it doesn't do much in terms of understanding in many ways. On an intellectual level, I understand why these people behaved the way they did, but from any sort of emotional level, I was too far gone. It's beautiful. The cinematography is stunning. I think the direction is really good. I even think that the screenplay is quite solid, just handled with such a cold, deft touch that I never connected with The Power of the Dog. Coming in at number 6, I have Drive My Car. This was the very last film on my Best Picture nominee watch list because I have to admit that runtime scared me. It scared me, but I knew I had to watch it. So I sat down, carved out my little 3 hours to fully dedicate to this film, and I'm glad I did. I enjoyed Drive My Car. I think it is a strong film overall. The direction is really well handled. All of the acting in this film is actually fantastic. And once again shows that the bias against non-English speaking roles is nuts. We need to be giving these foreign films acting nominations already. What's going on? A lot of greatness in Drive My Car. There are great monologues, there's really interesting stuff, obviously dealing with the power of art and grief, and a cast full of interesting characters. Unfortunately, I am definitely in the camp that thinks this did not need to be 3 hours long. The plot is actually quite scattered and a bit too scattered for my own liking, where we're jumping from this person to that person, from this weird little subplot to that weird little subplot. They're not all needed. Not all of the theater scenes are needed for what the story is trying to tell, for what the actual story itself is. We could have heavily edited this script to make it tighter, to streamline it, and make the runtime actually move along at a more palatable pace. Because as it is, yeah, you feel the 3 hours for sure. And once again, those wayward storylines, the different random little stuff that we do, really kind of took away from the ultimate emotional moments of the film. So I did feel more than I did with The Power of the Dog, which is ultimately what bumped it above that film. I connected more with the material, but the screenplay gets in its own way for me. Kicking off our top 5 at number 5, I have Nightmare Alley. An absolutely stunning film from top to bottom. Nightmare Alley is a technical feat delivered once again by master of beautiful technical feats, Guillermo del Toro. What I loved most about the film is this dark fairy tale aspect. What Del Toro does best, honestly, is transform his stories into dark, really grim fairy tales, and that fit this film to a perfect T. The third act specifically is absolutely amazing. I loved it. Bradley Cooper is wonderful, as he always is. Kate Blanchett comes in to absolutely steal the entire show. The set and production design, oh, are immaculate. The costumes are beautiful, and the cinematography has this gorgeous air to it. What ultimately keeps this film from moving up any higher, though, for me personally, is that the second act specifically really drags. It loses its way, it loses all momentum, and honestly had me worried we weren't going to be able to land this ending. Coming in at number 4, I have Koda. This is just a charming little film for me. I emotionally connected with it because I think a lot of people can emotionally connect with having a weird or awkward family and feeling like the odd one out of your family. I greatly appreciate what this cast and crew has done through its entire run, basically, of trying to gain accessibility and what they've done to push for captioning across the board. And it was great to be introduced to a lot of deaf talent that I wasn't familiar with prior to the film. Really great acting performances, honestly, up and down across the board. It doesn't break new ground. It runs through this type of feel good emotional filmmaking perfectly well to the point where, yeah, it gets you at the moment it wants to get you. Plus, the music is fun. The whole storyline is entertaining enough. Now, what kept me from ever really loving Coda is that I've seen this about a million times before. It is a very standard storyline, though I do think oftentimes when we are trying to break ground with representation, doing so, at least initially, through tried and true stories is a way to make it palatable and to make it accessible for a wide audience to come into your world. Also, the filmmaking itself is certainly nothing special. When it comes to things such as cinematography, editing, or any of the technical categories, really, that's where Coda really falls short. It's not this cinematic piece to behold. Rather, it's a feel good, nice movie. And in this year's crop of nominees, that was able to get it up to number 4. Coming in at number 3, I have the other feel good, nice movie of the bunch, and that is Belfast. I respect Kenneth Branagh for basically just laying it bare for us, if you will. He told the story, he crafted this film based on his own experience growing up, how he fell in love with film itself, but also his experience growing up in a divided Ireland. And I think he does so to really nice effect. All of the acting here is top tier. Heart is certainly here, and I loved his use of color in this black and white film. It's joyful, it's joyous. It's one of those films that has its heart in the right place and is able to translate that heart onto film in a way that is relatable to so many. Now, I think some of the riot stuff is where we go a little bit wayward, loses itself. It doesn't have enough bite in the politics aspect, the religion discussion, and that kind of warfare type of rioting that was taking place. And thus, that's where the film mostly falls short. But when it shines, this movie really shined. And ultimately, I really enjoyed Belfast. I know it's too conventional, too sweet, too whatever for so many out there, but I still really enjoyed it. It made my top 20 films of the year, and here it is at number 3 for the nominees. Coming in at number 2, I have King Richard. Arguably the third feel good movie of this list. I actually went into King Richard quite nervous. I'm a huge Venus and Serena fan, like lifetime Love them. They're my girls. And before I really understood everything that went into the film itself, I was one of those people that was actually quite nervous and taken aback that we were making a film about easily the best tennis story that's ever been. Not only about the GOAT herself, but two of the best players, period, to ever play the game. I was a bit confused why we were framing it around a man in their life as well. But when I saw Venus and Serena were heavily involved in the making of the film, getting it produced, and this is the story they wanted to tell. I said, you know what? Who am I? Let them tell the story they want to tell. And yes, Richard Williams, if you're into tennis, you know all about Richard Williams, was an integral part to their success, to their upbringing, as was Oracene. And he was quite the character. So it made sense to make a movie about this highly divisive character. And I have to say, I ended up loving King Richard. I saw it at the Denver Film Festival. It got a huge reaction out of our auditorium. The acting is stellar across the board. Will Smith really nailed Richard Williams. I know some think it's a caricature type of acting, but just watch the interviews for yourself. Evidence is there. These young, talented girls killed it as Venus and Serena. And then we had Anjanou Ellis, who was amazing as Oracene. It was entertaining, it was uplifting. It's a true story that really delivers on what you want on a good sports drama like this. And stayed pretty accurate to what really happened in their upbringing. Maybe it's the tennis fan in me, maybe it's the Williams sisters fan in me, but I really did love King Richard. And this is one of only two Best Picture nominees to make my top 10 of the year. Well, that just leaves one film left, the only Best Picture nominee to make my actual top 5 of the year, one of my favorite films of 2021. And my favorite Best Picture nominee is Dune. Well, I loved Dune. I'm sorry. I understand the criticisms with Dune. I get it. It is only half of a story. It is a part one for sure. And I understand if you found it, well, as dry as that sandy planet we were on. But for me, this type of high, nerdy sci fi just does it for me. The world building was absolutely amazing. Honestly, I connected with these characters, a problem so many others had. I was there. I felt emotionally connected to this family and what they were going through, more so than the books or the original film. This one really drew you in better to these people and these characters and the tragedy that kind of falls upon them. I enjoy that we are tackling the social commentaries of the story itself about culture mining, basically, and coming in and ravaging lands. Obviously, Denis Villeneuve absolutely nailed it behind the camera. Actually, everyone who worked on this film nailed it. It is a complete and total technical feat. This is one of those films where I honestly just watch and there's not a thing wrong with it. Visually, it's just perfect. Hans Zimmer absolutely destroyed this score, one of his most inspired and best scores in quite some time. Top tier acting from top to bottom. Timothy Chalamet was a fantastic call. I was engrossed. I was engrossed in the story. It completely transported me to a new place. And when it comes down to pretty much every facet of filmmaking, I just think Dune is the best of our Best Picture nominees. So that's it. That is my own personal ranking of the 10 Best Picture nominees 2022. Let me know, what do you think of my ranking? And most importantly, how would you rank the Best Picture nominees you've seen? Let me know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos, including our Oscars wrap up. Yep, we'll have that review piping hot and ready to go after we have all finally experienced the ceremony. I love you all so much for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.